Have you ever woken up to a minus 30 degrees Celsius Edmonton morning and realized your boiler isn't working? You're not alone. Here in Edmonton and areas like Sherwood Park, Beaumont, and Spruce Grove, boiler issues hit hard and fast, especially when they're ignored until the dead of winter. Today I'm sitting down with Adrian Heitz from Hinse Brothers Mechanical, and we're talking about something every homeowner and property manager in the greater Edmonton area should know: when to maintain your boiler and when it's time to replace it. If you want to avoid cold mornings, high repair bills, or worse, keep watching. I've got a quote for you. There's nothing quite as expensive as a service you didn't do until failure. Here's an interesting statistic. The global industrial boiler maintenance market is expected to grow at 4.6% annually through 2034. Why does that matter to you in Edmonton? More demand means higher costs and longer waits. Staying ahead with routine boiler checks isn't just smart, it's financially strategic. All right, Adrian, what are the most common boiler problems that you run into during Edmonton winters that could have been avoided with a maintenance check?
So some of the more common problems that we have with boilers are, like you said, the routine maintenance not being completed. So for an older boiler system, we want to make sure that the heat exchangers are clean, helps with efficiency. We also have a look at the pilot assembly and the igniter, make sure everything's working appropriately. The other thing too is we often have problems with pumps. Okay. So if the pumps are old and worn out, there's a chance of failure. If the bearings are going, we can have a look at those and replace where needed. Basically, we need to have, a good once over of the system. Mm-hmm. Check pressures, make sure your makeup water is working, this type of information, right?
Now, how does Edmonton's climate push boilers harder compared to other cities? And what are some local challenges that most people don't realize?
So due to our weather in Edmonton or in northern Alberta here, we've get some pretty extreme temperatures. So we've got issues such as freezing, often there's combustion air into the building. We need to make sure those don't end up freezing any condensate lines, that type of thing. Icing up of exhausts, okay. Right? So we need to double check everything was installed correctly and there's no leaks in the venting or anything like that. And make sure another thing too, when it gets super cold, is making sure that exhaust isn't getting sucked into your intake, your combustion intake on the boiler.
How would that happen?
So because the cold weather, it actually condenses the exhaust. So it sits a little closer to the ground. We've had a client, she was actually a furnace and she had her vent about 10 feet away. The wind was actually blowing the exhaust into her fresh air intake and setting off the carbon monoxide in the home. It's really important, people sometimes they'll replace equipment. Maybe it was inspected, maybe it wasn't. We do need to check anyway and make sure it was all done to manufacturer specifications as well as local code.
Right. So with that in mind, it's really important for someone to come out, if they have a boiler system or even a furnace, to come out and have somebody physically inspect everything so that, if anything does happen in the wintertime, you can kind of catch it ahead of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, what does a solid annual maintenance plan look like for homeowners in places like Sherwood Park or Stony Plain? Is it just once a year?
Well, we typically, if you just have a heating system, once a year is pretty good for a regular maintenance inspection and service. So we'd usually like to do that, early to mid-fall, get any kinks worked out before the cold weather hits. If you've got air conditioning, we usually throw in or add a second service in the spring.
Okay.
Then we can do proper testing. Once temperature's warmed up, test the pressures on the air conditioner, give it a cleaning, just basically check everything's working properly. Components aren't worn out or making some unusual sounds, that type of thing.
Yeah. And then if anything goes wrong, you guys are there to make suggestions and replacements.
Yeah, and quote a repair if needed.
So how would somebody know when it's time to replace their boiler instead of continuing to repair it, especially in older homes like around Spruce Grove or Beaumont?
Once an expensive repair is needed on an older boiler, it's a good idea to have a look at a replacement rather than putting, $1,000 component into a boiler system. Sometimes replacement makes more sense, so I'll give you options. If we repair it, here's what it'll look like. Here's a potential life expectancy. If we replace it, here's your warranty. Typically boilers come with a 5-year parts and labor warranty and then a 10-year heat exchanger. So it's a good idea to just weigh the options, and I can help go through those with you, help you come to a decision on what's best for your home.
Right. So rather than just, trying to sell something to someone, you're actually, do your best to try and suss out what the problem is and then give them some good options.
Yeah. I want to make sure that you guys have all the information. Mm-hmm. So I want you to be able to make an informed decision on, what the benefits are for any direction that you presented with.
Now, what are some of the key safety or building code factors that people in Edmonton should consider when doing a boiler replacement?
So boiler replacements in an older home in particular, to meet HVAC codes, if we're doing a major renovation, moving walls, you're making some major changes in the home, older systems don't have like a fresh air. So you don't have fresh air coming in, which is, it's nice to have that exchange of air in your home. That's code. The other thing is air movement. So if you have a radiant baseboard heating system, in today's age, you need to have air movement.
Okay, so what does that entail?
We can do different ways. So we can do an HRV, heat recovery ventilator. That'll bring in your fresh air and you can use it to circulate the air in the home. Those ones, typically we need to put in a preheat because it will exhaust stale air and use that stale air to warm up the incoming air, and vice versa. It works for cooling. But when it's super cold with our, minus 30, minus 40 temperatures, you do need to help out that incoming air, warm it up a little bit.
Right.
Other ways we can do it, we can size your boiler system to accommodate like a high velocity system or fan coil, and we can actually introduce forced air into the home to complement radiant heating. All sorts of different ways. And when we do that, it gives us the option to add air conditioning down the road or zone your system. You can, if say your basement is cooler or whatever, we can actually have a separate duct dedicated to each level, nice. Right? So I would have to come do a site visit, assess the situation, and then come up with options for you.
Now, that's kind of leads me to the next question. So walk us through how you would choose the right boiler for a typical Edmonton home, factoring the fuel type, factoring inefficiency.
Yeah, so the first thing I do, come do a site visit. I need the size of the home. I'll do a heat loss calculation, see what we are required for heat, what kind of options you're going to want. Do you want your boiler to heat your domestic hot water? Do you want a fan coil? Do you like the different system needs? So I'll assess all that information. I'll also have a look at how we're going to do the installation. So does it work in your home? Like if your mechanical room's in the middle of the house or middle of the basement, it often creates difficulty in venting it outside because we have to use high efficiency equipment now. Right. It's PVC vented. We're not using the traditional chimney anymore. Mm-hmm. So we do need to make sure that we have the ability to go up the side wall or maybe use that existing chimney stack to run it up through the roof.
Now, what does the cost breakdown look like for a replacement job versus going with ongoing maintenance for a boiler system?
So with ongoing maintenance, you may be a few $100s a year or something like that, or odd repairs here and there when we're looking at it. But compared to after hours call outs or weekend call outs, the price goes up exponentially.
Right.
So we have to, our suppliers, they'll open the doors, but they won't do it for free. They have a weekend charge as well. So it does pay to maintain your system, regular hours, catch things before they become a problem.
Yeah, because nothing's worse than minus 30 degrees for 2 weeks and you've got a dead boiler.
You have a dead boiler. Serious. You've got a limited supply of equipment because everybody's busy. You've got a limited supply of labor. So there's a lot of things to look at. The other thing too is it's a good idea to have, some sort of heat in the home, like some people in an emergency, you can use your stove to warm it up a little bit, some electric heaters, fireplace. It's good to have some kind of backup plan in the case you need to go for a day or two without heat.
Yeah, for sure. Whenever there's a cold snap, it seems that all of the heater, all the plug-in heaters, all the radiant space heaters seem to be sold out. So hopefully you have a couple of those kicking around if that should occur. We had our furnace die out one time, and it was, of course, the coldest week of the year. But luckily we had a fireplace, a wood fireplace. We were able to kind of keep the house heated with that. So it got us through till morning so we can get the parts and get it replaced. So that was good. So are there any newer technologies or boiler upgrades that are actually proving their value in Edmonton homes right now? Things like smart features, better fuel use, that kind of stuff.
So with smart thermostat technology, actually gives the homeowner ability to monitor the system from a distance. If you're away on vacation, you're at work, you can get a notification saying, hey, temperature's gone down 5 degrees and there's a call for heat. Nothing's happening. That's pretty important to have. Different smart features, that can increase the comfort level of the home too.
Okay.
So there's variable speed equipment, fan coils that will, give you a gentle breeze for heat rather than just full tilt or nothing at all. And they do a better job of maintaining a consistent temperature in the home.
Okay.
Right. So smart features do that. That comes down to safety in a way, what's happening. You can monitor the home, higher increased comfort levels and efficiency. Get a better efficiency from the equipment today.
Right. So it uses less fuel.
Yeah. So with a typical boiler, if it's 70 or 80% efficiency, you're losing that 20 to 30% of heat straight out the chimney. With a higher efficiency model, we can trap that heat and use it to heat the system.
I see.
That'll be a condensing boiler. So it does have like condensation as a result of the heating. And then we have to drain that down, pump it away to another drain.
Okay. So there's some new technologies that just make it more efficient all around.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, if someone in Edmonton is shopping for a boiler repair or replacement, what questions should they be asking contractors to make sure they're getting honest, safe, and skilled work?
So one, are you pulling permits when you're doing the work? We're working with gas. We want to make sure everything's done to code. It's good to have an extra set of eyes come look. So we'll pull a city permit or whatever municipality you might be in. You can take comfort in that. Have you guys been trained, ticketed journeyman, or, we'll have like a combination. So we'll have an apprentice because we need to pass that information on to the newer generation, right? So we want to always be training new people, but we also have, somebody to run the job, right?
Gotcha.
Make sure everything's being done properly.
Right. So having a licensed, insured, covered, experienced HVAC technician or boiler repair company come out and do that. There's easy ways to find that out. All right, guys. So if you are looking for a boiler maintenance or repair in Edmonton, Sherwood Park, St. Albert, Stony Plain, and all the greater Edmonton area, call Mr. Adrian Hinse with Hinse Brothers Mechanical. In my opinion, they are the best HVAC and plumbing company in the area. So give them a call and get them out, and they'll give you a fair quote and make sure that your boiler and furnace system is working tip-top for this upcoming winter. Thanks so much. We'll see you on the next one.